understand this stuff. Why would God, who's rooted in love, give us something so wonderful as the freedom to choose through the ability to reason, and then turn around and put us on a path whose outcome will only lead to one thing, and that one thing is what the Creator chose? Well, that doesn't seem loving to me. In fact, and here's an interesting point of contention between certain Christian groups and others, because I've heard certain Christians suggest, well, Satan, Lucifer, wanted all of mankind to follow God's path and to do what God knew was best for all mankind. In doing that, laying out predestination and leaving no room for free will. And they would say, well, and God knew that was wrong because God wanted people to choose whether or not they were going to live this particular way and treat other humans in a particular way, and if they acquired wealth, do certain things with it, whether or not they were going to be this person. There are varying degrees of good, there are varying degrees of what you do, and that will set the path for maybe what comes after this world. Who knows? But nevertheless, that's what many of these people believe, right? And so that is, to these folks who subscribe to this belief system, Lucifer's plan. And that's why he was cast out of the kingdom of heaven, and then there's all of a sudden this war of good versus evil, and Satan feeds on Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, feeds on all of your earthly desires, vanity, self-love, greed, and the desire to get what you can because this is it, and all this stuff, and love of money, and blah, 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 and then good is supposed to combat that with God. Now, there are other Christian groups I've talked to who believe the opposite, who believe that it was Eve biting the apple that committed the ultimate sin. Now, in some people, it's really interesting because there's so many different Christian beliefs, because I see some of them blending the two and blending this over here and this over here, and that's kind of, Tocqueville talked about this in his book, Democracy in America, in 1835, when he talked about all the different, how Christianity had sort of been diluted in the United States because of the pioneer spirit and because of the economics and everything natural that was available to us, which made the American person that they were, which is our history and why we are who we are today. You have to understand your history to understand who you are today. Remember, personal identity, understand your family history, then your cultural history, then you can go into a broader context, because that way you then know your position of where you're in this life, where you're at, and then you can most appropriately set yourself up for the future. Why do you think I always tell you to learn your family history and learn cultural history? It's so that you can understand these things, and it plays right into God.